just want to hear if there are things that you observed that you want to talk about, how this process is going for you, because we are learning as we're doing. We're an adaptive process here, so we need to make some tweaks. We're going to do that. I want to say one thing about this this interconnections work that we've been spending this afternoon on, and where we're going with that. So tomorrow you are going to do prioritization, and it's not directly coming out of the intersections. So if there's an item on there that didn't show up as being well intersected with other things, you can still prioritize it, okay? So this is not, you know, a cutoff point, so to speak. But it is a way to lift things up and help you look at it. And you can look at it from a couple of different ways. One is the impact that this might have across various areas. One might be, this is a place where we potentially could find allies to work with. You know, we normally work in this lane, but hey, maybe we should go over and talk to the child care people, and maybe we could get a coalition going there. So there's a couple ways in which that can be useful. That said, is there any observations, things that really were aha moments for you, questions that you have that you'd like to share? And if you remind us of your name again.
Sure. My name is Ivory. Under workforce development in the human potential, I think we're again missing people with disabilities there. I think there would be policies relating to eliminating sheltered workshops, requiring minimum wage for disabled employees because that's not required. Promoting MAEPD, which is medical assistance for employed persons with disabilities, which most people don't know exists. So I think there's some work to be done there in terms of including that population.
Thank you very much.
That's so true.
Hello, Sean Krzyzewski with the Alliance for Sustainability. And Jane and I were talking a bit earlier about lamenting that there was no state planning agency, that it disappeared like 20 years ago. And so it's hard for all these different silos to talk to each other, both within the state government level and or the city level. But you know, there is data collection happening, and the Met Council is going to be giving every single city their carbon data every year now. So they could also potentially track home ownership by race or income disparity or whatever. You could, so we could get, you know, the state, whatever agencies and the Met Council giving communities their data of how it's going on, like getting over whatever disparities, and then having strategies to get, you know, momentum in the directions. So one of my hopes would be that is if the blueprint can create a connectedness between different state agencies and along with nonprofits, we could then intentionally use the opportunity of a new governor's office to connect like the state workforce development boards with the EQB working on climate goals and or the people doing procurement with equity procurement things. So I think there's a way of creating more of a transparent way of, through this insight formation software thing that we could all tie into to track making progress on these cross-cutting things.
Excellent, thank you.
Tom Legg, I have a little concern on the first page of economic development, that first page of stuff, I guess it's page 5 of this list, the colorful list. They seem that some of those ideas seem to be about promoting individual businesses and giving money to individual businesses. Government bureaucrats have been notoriously bad at picking winners and losers. I don't know how many of you remember Job Z, that was gonna be the thing that developed rural Minnesota. Does anybody know?
A couple of people apparently, because I heard a couple of yucks and moans.
Job Z was designed to give money to individual businesses within Minnesota, and it was big, there was big dollars put into that in terms of subsidies and tax relief and so forth. Does anybody know of an impact of Job Z? I don't. And some of the things were like theaters, movie theaters. Well, if you're gonna promote economic development, it's very important to get people to produce more stuff for export. I don't mean to China, I mean let's build, if we're gonna promote economic development, we should be promoting people to build stuff that at least goes to Wisconsin or to the Twin Cities from rural Minnesota, not to buff each other's shoes in that local community. That doesn't do anything for the economy. So just a thought.
Pablo Obregón, and this is just a general question about the buckets. I wonder if you could explain a little bit more the rationale on the name human potential. I think, if you Google human potential, something else comes, and I wonder if that's going to be a little unclear for people.
I'm sorry, I distracted her. Monica's gonna ask her again.
I think Kate can probably elaborate on that a little bit more.
So, I'm sorry, I was being distracted by. Can you repeat the question? Okay.
Look at ping pong.
Just a simple question. Could you explain the reasoning why that terminology was used to when you call the bucket human potential?
I think Dave is going to answer that.
Which one?
Growth and justice in many organizations, business organizations and social justice organizations for years have used the term human capital to describe all the things that apply to education, healthcare, and economic security, and things that make people more realize their potential and be more productive and so forth. So and originally this bucket was called human capital. We've had some pushback from people who don't like the idea of humans being viewed as capital. So we came up with this term, but in general it has to do with the development of children from birth through career preparation, with the healthcare of humans, with the economic security of households so that they have enough to have enough. And so I don't know if this helps, but it's those kinds of things. And this is an opportunity to say that some of these categories, there's in human potential, there was in some of these categories, we may end up in the blueprint recategorizing some things. I know in human potential, there was quite a few policy goals having to do with arts that may end up in economic development instead of human potential, because a lot of people think it belongs in that bucket.
Could you elaborate on what number 30 means, enforce and expand public procurement? I hope it means more than just spending more money or buying things, but is that what that means?
That's mine. That's Brett.
That's mine.
So, Brett, so if you look on.
Yep, page 12.
Yeah, but what page is it on? In
12.
In here. On page 12, you get more detail.
Okay,
there's currently a statute that is law, but not actually enforced that well, that calls for, when public contracts go out, that at least 25% of it should be going to communities of color or disadvantaged communities. It's not happening right now, according to several studies, to literally less than 1%. So basically, we're just trying to follow the letter of the law on that one to expand opportunity for all people to compete and to receive opportunities to gain access to various contracts. So it's not anything that we're spending more money, it's just actually honoring the statute that's on the books right now.
And the Viking Stadium is a great example of growing the right ways.
Yes, actually, the Viking Stadium was a phenomenal project. Also, light rail was actually followed through from that standpoint. But we're just trying to on all all contracts, and that it also would include University of Minnesota and state university systems. Actually, all public spending should be.
So we could just add, expand public procurement from minority-owned businesses or something like that.
I wouldn't say so much expand, I would just say honor the current.
Right.
Yeah, enforce.
Expand the university was the part. Well, the expansion is mixed.
Well, the expand, and please remember that when we're talking about state, University of Minnesota state institutions, they should fall within. So it's not expanding it, it's just actually doing it. That we're not doing a good job of right now.
Thanks, Brad. Here's one here.
Hi, Nicolette Sligo with Honor to Earth. I thought it was pretty interesting in the end section here on democracy that, you know, a lot of the points were about voting rights and representation and honoring the treaties, but there wasn't really much about actual citizen engagement in policy creation or the implementation of some of these policy goals. So I think that the blueprint could be really strengthened by kind of including some participatory elements in it.
More of this.
That's great observation. One of the major issues that you have with that is that we're asking the state to actually do something. And from that respect, the state's not necessarily going to get into the business of civic engagement outside of, we have elections, we do this. What could take place, and what we're trying to allude to, is finding a way to get our nonprofit community, etc., to get more engaged in the process, to work in partnership with. But when we're talking about this document and building up the necessary legislative agenda, it's very difficult. Even there was one, number 82, actually that would be more of a philanthropic conversation. It's not so much that the state's going to invest in individuals to run for office, of course, with the exception that we can find a way to do better state funding, such as the PCR, public contribution refund, or a voucher from there. So just remember that we're not, when we're drawing this document up, we can't necessarily say, hey, state, you guys do the promotion for the civic engagement. I think we'll have to do it. But from that standpoint, there used to be an office called the Office of Citizenship and Volunteer Services that we are going to embed into this conversation, because we actually had that office to kind of do some coordination, but not necessarily promotion.
That just, Gail, my name's Gail, that just made me think of, maybe this falls under that same line, but same reasoning, but can the state promote ranked choice voting? Would that be something that could end up in a document like this or not?
Yes, legislature could take it up. In the conversation that I have with a couple of legislators, what they would like to be able to do is have the various municipalities have the ability to choose their voting processes and not necessarily prescribe this, that, and everything else. So it keeps them out of the business of saying, you usually do X, Y, Z, but to allow for the municipalities who have to govern, so either the city or the county, to say this is the process, and then it's up to the city and county at that point in time to go from there.
Thank you. I'm Jose William Castellanos, and when I was reading about the democracy here, I started thinking that we should think about the definition of democracy. Because I understood that democracy means that you can vote and then your vote have one person, one vote. But what I'm learning is that it depends in which district are you voting. So my vote might have a different weight in the final outcome than other people vote. And then what is the framework of democracy? What is our definition? What is the philosophical approach of democracy here? And then we can start a conversation about that.
Sarah, this down here.
Hi, thanks, I'm Pat. And I just want to speak in support of this number 31, establish a bank in Minnesota to promote agriculture, commerce, and industry. We are going to need some serious funding for a livable future, whether it be green jobs, moving towards greener agriculture. One of the biggest challenges in terms of really keeping from identifying how do we move from a corn, soy, toxic monocrop food system to a regenerative food system that actually produces foods that people need and eat and more nutritious foods. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to need some funding. The regenerative movement is growing well, but it's like for a state bank, you know, North Dakota, they have an incredibly low default rate. You have local banks and credit unions providing the funding. Here you've got a pool of money at a very affordable rate for North Dakota residents, and like Minnesota needs this. Now this is going to be a big fight, just like the fight for a healthier future, green energy, green jobs, affordable care, or not affordable, universal health coverage. Affordable universal coverage, you know, all of this, it's going to take funding, and I think this is like one of the biggest bangs for our buck is promoting a Minnesota state bank, and not only as far as for agriculture wise, but then also other Minnesota industries as well. Thanks.
Thanks. And which area? That's under economic development?
Yeah, yes. And 31.
Yeah. Here.
Oh. Yes, I was going to say that, you know, as we look into better transportation, we absolutely need to get rid of and abolish metro mobility, or have it made over. This is in the Twin Cities. It's not doing what it needs to be doing. It, you know, most of the bus drivers are rude. They put people on suspension for 2 weeks, you know, if there's, you know, what they claim is a no-show, and then they're, you know, hypocrites because they come late, and then they, you know, decide that they, you know, won't have people like myself paying, you know, which is nice. That's nice, you know, if they do that, but, you know, they, you know, I happen to be one who lives in a town where it's not 24-hour a day, 7 day a week, and I believe every area should be a 24-hour a day, 7 day a week. And then, you know, when I wanted to go to a dance at a church through another group I'm active with, they said they didn't go to Lakeville, and I said,
I don't understand that because you take me to my uncle and aunts in Burnsville, and they're right next door to Burnsville. And I don't see anybody doing anything about metro mobility at all. I feel like I'm being blown off by the DFL Disability Caucus every single time. And I do mean every single time. There's, you know, the chairperson said she'll send me pieces of information about meetings. It's like, when are they gonna come up? What are they gonna do? A lot of people are angry about the way Metro Mobility treats them. And I think, you know, when I get back to St. Paul, it'll be partially better for me where I can just walk to some of the meetings I go to, but I'm still gonna have to BS around with them in other arenas, like when I go to specific volunteer volunteer work that I go to during the day, or to, you know, some or to my choir on Monday, and when I go on all the way on out to Minnetonka to a synagogue and over to the Jewish Community Center.
Thank you. And I didn't catch your name, Beth?
Oh, yes, I'm Beth.
Thanks.
Sorry if I didn't.
No, that's what I'm here to remind folks of. Thank you. And so that, I think, falls under transportation and transit. Yeah, which is in the physical infrastructure. And I do notice that it doesn't really call out.
Nobody's doing anything about it.
Yeah, transportation for people with disabilities, you know, which is even a statewide issue as well, as well as the metro transit that you mentioned. Is there anyone else? Yeah. Is this about the bank again?
If I could just add one thing quickly, under the Minnesota State Bank,
Yes,
Ken Pentel with the Ecology Democracy Party is an expert on all the benefits of a Minnesota State Bank. This is one of the things that is incorporated in the work that the Ecology Democracy Party is doing. And this is like we won't be the only bank, the only state working on a state bank. There are several others. And so I so wish Ken was here to give us more information.
And the Institute for Local Self-Reliance.
Huh?
The Institute for Local Self-Reliance.
Thank you, Sean.
Stacy Miller. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Great. Love to see the connections. I agree.
Some I posted, but it seems like we're talking about these anyway, so I'm gonna go for it. Under housing, some of the action items. I think for number 66, it says preserve and increase safe and affordable rental housing. Number 245 needs to be eliminated. That is not a do no harm approach. It proposes increasing subsidized housing participants' rental burden from 30 to 35% to raise funds for other families. We should not be using low-income people as a money-raising effort, and that defeats low-income housing, which is supposed to take you out of cost burden, which is over 30%. So I think that needs to go. That's not a do no harm approach. I also think under that same section, we need to advocate for more renter protections, including a right to organize, banning crime-free ordinances, having just cause non-renewal of leases, and limited look-backs at evictions, because a lot of the preservation of rental housing is done by tenant organizing, so there needs to be laws in place to protect them from retaliation and eviction for doing that work.
Excellent, thank you. And you said that these were written up under there.
Yes.
It's a little, we should have given the poor woman bigger post-its. Just like a little stack, like 6 post-its. Over here.
Do I have to stand up?
No.
I'll stand. On the objection. I'm Kimberly Nagel again, and on the topic of human potential, thank you very much for the comment, but also something that was said earlier about getting nonprofits and localized efforts to happen to solve some of what has been brought up. And when I look at this larger piece, I don't see a bucket for that, and I'm wondering if a community development bucket might be warranted. Because you cannot make a one-size-fits-all. I'm sorry, we're on this mission to make a one-size-fits-all, but Minnesota is unique in its diversity. And I think we need to embrace that, not only diversity of geography, but of people and